Hello all. Oh, we're back in Studio 7. And it's another beautiful summer day. It's probably about 69 and lots of people around. It's getting a very crowded place here in San Francisco. All right. I wanted to respond to a particular message that was left on the last video. If you want to go to the last one, you'll see the message, or I'll show it to you right here. All right, so I wanted to respond to him by thanking him for that information, and that I did a lot of research myself, and I found that indeed China, or China, depending on where you're from, is getting about 80+% of Iraq's oil at this time. But let's go back in history and look at this whole subject a little bit about Iraq's stolen oil and what happened to it. And they're over here in Studio 7 modifying it for another photo shoot over there, I guess. They're making all this noise, so everybody else's studio is being polluted with chainsaws. So sorry about that. All right, let's go back to the 2000 Bush-Cheney election. We don't want to forget how much Big Oil spent on that election to get those guys. There goes a tree. They just cut down a tree. So Big Oil spent probably multi-millions of dollars on this election, more than they ever have in the past. Okay, then the Iraq War happened, but at that time, before the war, as we had pointed out at that time, the Bush-Cheney cabal came up with the National Energy Policy Development Group. This group, of course, one of the main heads of this group was Halliburton. Yes, Dick Cheney's company, remember? Okay, so this group talked for months on where Iraq would be with their oil. They made suggestions such as Iraq must give up their oil and give it to the international oil companies to develop. Before Saddam Hussein was taken out of office, they had nationalized their oil so that the people, and plus mostly Saddam, got the oil money. But some of the people did get a large amount of oil money, and most of the people got a little bit of the oil money. And that's called nationalizing your oil, so that all the oil money stays in your country and your country profits by it. Mostly it's supposed to be that the people of the nation get most of the money, but that's not the way it works. So the war started, and as the war ended, of course, the Bush-Cheney group got all the big companies to come right in and start drilling for oil and developing their fields. But they also had to change the law of Iraq, because it said in their laws that you could not change the oil, you could not make the oil public. It had to be for the people only. It didn't get to go to corporations. So they forced the new government to change the oil law, and then the oil companies came in. Well, which ones were they? How about Exxon, Chevron, BP, ConocoPhillips, and Halliburton? Yes, that's right, Halliburton was in there right away, because a ton of support companies from the U.S. poured into Iraq and took over most of the infrastructure and took most of the money, including the oil field. Well, since then, how did China and Russia get so much of Iraq's oil? Well, first of all, Russia had made some deals just before the war with Saddam to get their oil. And as soon as we took over the country, we nullified those agreements. Well, apparently Russia has been fighting to get those agreements reinstated, and so they now get some of the oil from Iraq. But what happened is that one by one, the big companies couldn't handle the country. They just didn't fit. It didn't work well for them. They had too many costs, security costs, and they were killing too many people with their people coming and going to the airport, and so on and so forth. So they one by one left the country, and each one, plus there were two that were kicked out of the country by Iraq, and I believe it was Chevron that was just the latest one to be kicked out. And that leaves a huge vacuum. And of course, who's right there but China? You know, China is going around the world buying up all the resources it can. Doesn't matter what the country stands for or anything, they're just buying it up for themselves, and that is how the Iraqi stolen oil ends up in China. So 10 years after the war, CNN came out and said yes, the war was about oil. Several others came out even involved with it, saying that yes, that was an oil war, that the U.S. will take whatever it needs for its national interest, and that's what the law tells them to do. This law was put in and modified by the Republicans at that time, and changed the law that said that we had to pay attention to the national interests over everything else, into that we would do anything for national interest, including take oil or take natural resources from any country, doesn't matter. And ever since then, that's been the doctrine. It's called the Bush Doctrine, I believe. And by the way, the oil minister, Baker al-Aloon, I don't know if that's right. Anyway, he was appointed by the U.S. and has been in that position ever since. And he is directly involved with Halliburton, who's directly involved with the Cheney Group and the PNAC Group. If anybody wants to know about other issues, go look at page 51 of the PNAC document and find out how all of this ties together to stealing as much oil as we can here in the U.S., regardless of what the consequences or who dies for it. But I wanted to bring that up to you, and that's the story in a very quick blip, because just take a lot of the different keywords and research this yourself to find out what really happened, you know, what history says happened versus what our countries are saying that happened. It's quite a story, and it's continuing on. This hasn't quit. Iraq is now back into fighting with its Sunnis and Shias, and Muslims are all fighting and trying to gain control, because the appointed ones put in and voted on in Iraq from the U.S. don't seem to be doing the job of inclusiveness for all three groups. They seem to be only favoring a certain group here and a certain group there for certain things. And of course that's called corruption, and we know what happens. So this will continue on. Okay, well, I haven't been putting on as much as I'd like. Been having some computer issues with software not agreeing, because I have old software and it doesn't agree with the new operating system updates. That's surprising. So as this problem gets worse, there may be less videos, but I'll still try and put some on. Anyway, thanks for all the comments and the thumbs up and all that, and appreciate any new subscriptions, and until next time.